This is green. See it? There's a red party, there's a blue party, and there's a green party. I'm not talking about the environment. This is the party. And so Silicon Valley, they know how to play on the green team. They can get along when necessary if this is involved. Same on Wall Street. In Washington, you don't know what's going on. There's a blue team, a red team, a yellow team. One guy wants to be closer to the president. The other guy's jealous that Elon's traveling with Trump back and forth to Mar-a-Lago and Air Force One. They start shooting at the guy. And that's what happened.
So you just think it was an inside job, basically, that Trump allies who didn't like Elon's vision just slowly pushed him out of favor with the president.
Yeah, and these attacks on his companies were orchestrated.
Right.
To think otherwise, you don't understand how it works. They orchestrated these attacks on his companies.
What about what he was there to do? Because his signature project was Doge. Do you think that was a success?
Well, I don't think it was a failure. I don't think it was as successful as perhaps as they wanted it to be. I think they learned something, that it's harder to cut the government than people had anticipated. If you had said to me, and you can find this in recordings about me, you say, well, Doge, what's going to happen? He's going to find some things to cut. He's going to find it harder to cut other things. He's going to realize that the government is not a business. It's just a weird thing. This is eternal.
It's almost like he tried to do the Twitter cuts when the government just didn't work.
You can't do that. So he tried to. Let me give a news flash to the Silicon Valley people listening in. The government is not a business. You don't need a businessman to run the government. You need a policy wonk to run the government who can build a consensus and could provide long-term guidance to a government. You got to move the aircraft carrier slowly. It's not going to turn in the water like a speedboat. And so you have to target things. Clinton understood that. We're going to target the budget, and we're going to get the budget in a certain sequence so that the growth of the economy is going to exceed our spending. And when we get to the end of the Clinton term in 2000, we're printing a $240 billion budget surplus, last budget surplus that the U.S. printed. So you have to think of the government very differently than a business. You're a conductor. You've got an orchestra. On some days, they want to play from the same sheet music. On other days, they don't want to play together, and the cacophony of sounds coming out of the government is very nasty. And it's your job to try to calm everybody down and get them on the same sheet music. It's harder to do today because we've gotten way more polarized, and there's a lot more entrenched interests that keep themselves perpetually in power as opposed to serving the people. So Elon's stint in the government, very well intended, I think successful. He's pointed out a lot of mistakes. I think the declarative statements that he's making on X today are evidence of his knowledge and his now worldly understanding of what goes on in the government, which is why he is being so critical. He knows that spending bill is going to increase the slope of spending at too fast of a rate to the growth of the U.S. economy, which means the deficit is going to widen, which means that we're stealing from future generations of Americans, which is very unfair at this point in our history. It's very unfair to the next two generations coming up in the country.
Okay, can I give you one more explanation? By the way, this is not pro-anti-Elon. I'm just trying to think through what happened with him. It's a very consequential moment for him to jump into the government.
I'll tell you some negative things about Elon, too. I'll tell you positive and negative.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be pro-Elon.
We're doing this as straightforward analysis. So
I'll tell you what he got wrong.
But let me just kind of throw this other idea out there, which is that maybe there were people within the government that didn't like what he was doing. Maybe the Democrats, sort of had it out for his businesses because he had become so close to Trump. But maybe the reason why he's left the government is because Doge wasn't. He aimed to cut trillions of dollars. He ended up cutting, I think a couple $100 billion, maybe. And he went to Wisconsin to try to sway an election. He failed after spending a lot of money, and his poll numbers were bad. So it's just simple politics.
Yeah. Well, but worse than that. So Model S comes out. Do you know who Elon Musk is? 70% of the Americans say they know who Elon Musk is. Do you have a favorable opinion of Elon Musk? 70% of the Americans that know Elon Musk say they have a favorable opinion of Elon Musk. He is the Tony Stark of our era. Most people that know who he is, wow, we're glad he's one of us. He's an American entrepreneur. Half the country has a favorable opinion of him. You ask people now, do you know Elon Musk? 90% of the Americans know who he is. 70% of those Americans have an unfavorable opinion of him. So look at the numbers. You've got a 63% negative opinion, and when you go into politics, that happens. And what if he had talked to me, not that he would have, but he had talked to me and said, listen, you're selling cars to progressives. You're selling cars to people that believe that you are an environmental pioneer. You're trying to help heal this environmental catastrophe that we've created. And so you're a hero to these people. If you're going to side with Trump, and I get why, because the Democrats are out to lunch, they're breaking your balls on SpaceX launches, they're torturing you with the electric car company because of the love affair they have with the auto worker unions, and I get why they're doing that to you. But if you take a chill, this group of Democrats, this older group of Democrats is going to pass. Mm-hmm. And then you could align yourself with a newer group, like a Ro Khanna group of Democrats, and be a way better experience for you if you decide to become politically active. But he sees the shooting, and God forbid, and thank God Trump wasn't killed, in Butler, PA, July of 2024. And he's like, okay, this guy's going to win. That visual picture of Trump with his hand up in the air, blood on his ear, American flag behind him, is a winning picture. Let's just be honest with everybody. Elon sees this. He immediately goes out and endorses him. Sean McGuire from Sequoia goes out and endorses him. And now you've created this portal for other Silicon Valley people who have typically hid their political stripes. There were way more conservatives in Silicon Valley than they were willing to admit to in 2012 or 2016 or even 2020, but now it's 2024, and they're like, okay, the portal's open. There's space for David Sachs. There's space for Chamath. There's space
Mark Andreessen.
There's space for Elon. I think Horowitz was there, then he backed off.
Right.
Okay, and so now, but you're with the wrong guy. Let me give you a news flash. You're with the wrong guy because this is a transactionalist. It's not just that he's a narcissist. He's an angry guy. He hates himself, and he's projecting that hatred into the society. And he's a divisive guy, and he's got ill-founded policies as it relates to economics and ill-founded policies as it relates to tariffs. And I know Elon thinks he's an imbecile. Let me just give you my proof because it's like geometry in ninth grade. Elon thinks he's an imbecile. Let me apply the proof. He's tweeting about Peter Navarro a couple of weeks ago. He says Peter Navarro is as dumb as a bag of rocks. And then there's another tweet, which I adored. No, I apologize. I just want to personally apologize to the bag of rocks.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to love Elon for this. But look at me. The fingerprint of Peter Navarro and Donald Trump on trade and economics is identical. Mm-hmm. So when you're saying that someone's an imbecile and the person that's identical to that person therefore definitionally also has to be an imbecile. So Elon's not a dummy. Right. He knows these tariffs are wrong. He knows they're bad for the society. And he knows this big, beautiful spending bill is actually atrociously ugly, big but atrociously ugly spending bill and very harmful long-term to the interests of America and its citizens, but very good short-term for these pigs in Washington feeding at the trough.
Yeah. And Anthony, by the way, this is why it's so great to have you here. And folks, this is why I wanted to have this conversation with Anthony. It's so difficult to speak about Elon's role in politics. But here we have a Republican, former communication director of the Trump White House.
Why is it difficult? Because he's a powerful guy and
everyone thinks you're coming in when you speak about Elon with an axe to grind. But that's not you. You're an investor in Elon's companies. I think that's the right diagnosis, by the way.
I have no axe to grind.
I know.
Here's what I would say.
That's why I'm glad you're here.
I want Elon to go back to work. I think he is literally the quintessential American hero entrepreneur. I think he's a brilliant visionary. I think he's gotten so many things right in his career. This XAI, the Grok stuff is phenomenal. It's helped me in my business. It's helped me as a person. I think the stuff he's doing with Neuralink is going to be transformative for so many people with
Yep.
disabilities.
But we had Nolan Darbaugh, the first Neuralink patient, on the show a couple months ago.
Yeah,
It's pretty. I've seen four technological miracles in my life: the iPhone, ChatGPT, driving in a driverless Waymo car, and watching Nolan play a video game and beat me in a video game.
I have no
using
axe
just
to grind,
his
but
brain.
I find that people are nervous about saying things about Elon because he's a powerful guy and they don't want to get in his field of vision and they don't want to cross him. But I'm my attitude is, I want to be real with people because I think that really smart people are real with people and then they gravitate to each other. Like if I've got a booger in my nose, do I have a booger in my nose, Alex?
All clear, Anthony.
Okay, but if I had one, I would want you to say, hey, Mooch, you got a booger in your nose. This way I could excuse myself and rip the booger out of my nose. And you got to be with people in life that are going to talk to you straight, but they're going to talk to you straight out of love where they want to help you. And if anything, I think Tesla's a great company. I think this robotic stuff he's doing at Tesla is amazing. I think he hurt his brand by going into Washington. And I think there's plenty of time to repair the brand. The great news about America, F. Scott Fitzgerald got something really wrong. He was a brilliant writer. 100th anniversary of a Long Island novel, The Great Gatsby, came out in April of 1925. But Fitzgerald got one major thing wrong, Alex. He said there are no second acts in American life. Very famously said that 100 years ago. He got it wrong. There's hundreds of second
and third acts for sure.
There are 10th acts. Trump is an example of that. I'm an example of that. I don't know your life story, but I bet if you had a shortcoming or a failure, you could pull yourself together and come back from it. America loves the comeback. They want the success story. So if you invite me back in a year, I'll make a prediction on your show. Elon will be flourishing in a year. His businesses will be flourishing because he's that kind of a guy. But politics is a rough sport, man. And you're talking to somebody who's got tire tracks on his back.
Yep.